honor for me to have you as a participant of this important project called Breaking the Silence. The aim
Thank
of the
you.
project is basically to know the menstruation stories of the
Mhm.
working woman across the globe from different, sectors. When we
Yes.
use the word menstruation, it's not a single word. It has lot of factors associated with it. It has
Yes.
mental, physical well-being, gender norms, cultural
Ye-
beliefs, religious practices. I have seen in my life a lot of religious practices are associated with menstruation cycle and workplace inclusivity and gender
ye-
inequality. So I would like to ask you a few questions, and you feel free. It's more like conversation, more stories, more anecdotes. So
ye-
I'm just going to my first question. That how do you experience the menstruation, emotionally and physically? It might be your personal experience, or might be, you have observed your students, your colleagues. So feel free to share your thoughts. Thank you.
Okay. So for myself, I had a relatively straightforward menstruation. I remember as a young woman having probably a bit of backache, and I remember the seats in my school not being particularly comfortable at that time of the month. But I had a fairly sort of quiet physical and emotional experience. What I didn't have was a great deal of peer support. Nobody talked about this issue. It was very much a taboo. It was also almost a situation of shame. So every now and again, a girl would, stain the back of her skirt, and everybody would laugh or make cruel remarks. And I also remember a couple of times when my mother wasn't particularly organized, and so for example, when I've had my first period, we didn't have any sanitary towels in the house. So we had a panic, and there were a few times when I was at school and I didn't really have enough sanitary protection with me. So I was conscious of smell and the danger of leakage, those kind of things that I'm sure a lot of girls went through, but we so didn't talk about it. And I remember, boys the ultimate put down was to give any suggestion that they knew you were on your period, and you could have something really nasty said to you and you'd be absolutely so embarrassed. So that's the kind of cultural background that I grew up in. And I remember once having a conversation when I had moved into being a student, and then actually a fairly senior student. I remember being with a couple of male friends, one of whom had a partner who had very, very big difficulties with her periods. Had to take 2 days off work every month, would go to bed, and my male friend saying, well, do you agree with having time off for this? And I remember saying, absolutely not. I don't agree with it at all. It makes the rest of us women feel, very much tied to our periods, and we can't have this. So I remember, when I think about it now, being so unsympathetic to another woman, and I feel terrible about that. And then as I sort of grew up, and I needed to grow up, I became aware of a couple of very close friends who had endometriosis. So they had extremely painful periods, and in the workplace there was really nothing that was supportive of them. The best they could do was take 2 days of their annual leave, and that was very much at the whim of their boss. So, the boss might say, well, no, now's not a good time to take annual leave. And they would have to struggle on. And then finally, and I'm sorry, Aditi, this feels like it's a monologue. But then finally, when I think I was about 35, I was lucky enough at a particular university to lead a project with an organization called Moon Cup, who were the first producers, certainly in the UK, of the latex cup for menstruation. And they wanted to develop pads that were eco-friendly, that didn't contain gels or the sort of sophisticated things that have been developed but are highly pollutant. So I was involved with this. It was run by a wonderful woman who was, a very feminist woman. And, all of the women workers who worked for her, when they were on their period, they had time off. There was no problem at all. And I really had my eyes opened to what a workplace looks like when you simply go with the flow, so to speak, of women in their natural cycles who have this part of their biology, our biology, and where a workplace is simply saying, this is part of natural life. And it's okay. And it's okay to have time off, regardless of whether you feel terrible or whether you just actually feel like you could have a couple of days to, catch up with yourself. And I thought that was so humane. But of course, that was in England. Where things were very much more, I think, open. But still in the workplace, there is a terrible taboo. And certainly with students, I think there is period poverty continuing. There are students, and I think with the cost of living crisis, which is global, not just UK based, there's a real sense that actually it is so expensive to simply attend to this natural bodily function. It's terrible. Sanitary products are taxed, and they are expensive, even the most basic. And I think governments, as well as employers, need to do something about this.
Thank you. I think it's a great answer. Like, you have addressed so many things in one single answer. I really appreciate you. I just wanted to, before I move to the next question, I can say that in India, when I got my first period, my mom, my grandmom, they told that you should hide it. You should not say anything to anybody. And also, like, being a young girl, like, you can't play, you can't go out, you are like, and also in India, like, there are rituals, like, you can't participate in any rituals, like, you are away from everything. So I think that self-respecting, like, it is nothing wrong with you, is so important. And I think our society never allowed us, like, they always make you feel that it's something wrong with you because you are not allowed to anyway.
That you're unclean. Yeah.
Absolutely. So my next question you have already addressed. I think I still would like to ask my next question to you, that we all are surrounded with several stakeholders, like our family members, our friends, our neighbors, and when we started working, colleagues play a very important role. So I just wanted to know that how does your people around you are empathetic with you, or you have seen with your colleagues that they understand not only in the context of UK, but probably, in the context of Egypt also?
Yeah, I think I'm finding Egypt very much more woman-centered in a way. And I think without making a big deal of it, I think I've been aware of a couple of colleagues who've said, it's that time, or, I don't feel great. And people seem, now this is within a university context, but there seems to be a kind of kindness, that I'm aware of. Now, obviously, I can't speak in great detail about the Egyptian context, nor am I an Egyptian woman, but I am sort of aware of people being helpful to each other, to women being helpful to each other. So the people surrounding me, I think, feel switched on to the idea of menstruation being something that we have to be aware of in the workplace. I mean, I would still like to see in Egypt, as much as the UK, in every bathroom, in every public toilet or toilet in the workplace, a collection of sanitary products that people can use. Now, there's an argument which I've heard advanced and I think is nonsense, which is, these will be stolen, people will take far more than they need, And well, one, if somebody does do that, so what? If they take a bunch of tampons because they'll use them for a couple of months, so what? And I think I would like to see that more common. In fact, I'd like to see it universally. I have seen in Egypt men buying sanitary towels in the supermarket. So, I'm taking that as a signal that there isn't a sense of as much kind of shame. I still don't think it's culturally something that's talked about massively, but it is the closer we get to it being a natural function, the same as if you cut yourself, you need a plaster, it's no big deal. Then the closer we get to that, the better, really. But I do think what I'm conscious of is this issue of cost, and people will use all kinds of reasons not to have free and freely available sanitary products.
Thank you. I think it's a very important issue what you, or you can say concern, what you have raised about the cost of the sanitary napkin. I can see in India there are a few social entrepreneurs, those who are coming up with zero cost sanitary napkin, eco-friendly sanitary napkin, especially for the rural women. Like there are many case studies available where rural women, come across with major health crisis because of the unhygiene and of course not availability of the sanitary napkin. And I think it's so important actually.
Well, it's interesting. When I did the work with Moon Cup, we looked a lot at rural areas, not only in far away, but also near. So, for example, in the UK, there's and in Ireland as well, there's a kind of particular moss that grows in the kind of boggy areas, and it's called sphagnum moss. It's brilliant at absorption. So it's a superpower in terms of its absorption. And we looked at developing sanitary products that would incorporate this, and there would be similar types of plant material across the world, but incorporating this so that a sanitary napkin wasn't just folded cloth, because there's only so much absorption in that, but that would also kind of incorporate some of this material that would just help with holding on to some of the menstrual flow. One of the things that I do worry about, of course, is in the particularly in the West, but in developed areas, there has been more and more of a kind of pharmaceutical approach to the design of sanitary products. So they contain not only natural products, but they also contain highly absorbent gels and actually strong chemicals. Curiously, so do nappies now. Highly developed nappies, and one of the things that those cannot be landfilled. They don't biodegrade easily, so we end up with a huge amount of waste. So I think there are two things here, Aditi. I think the more open we could be about menstruation, and the more we could learn from the good things that rural communities, and kind of historical approaches to menstruation have brought. If those two things could come together, I think we could all be onto a winner, because we could really deal with thinking about pollution, but thinking about the need to deal with this natural happening, so that people don't have hygiene problems or health problems, or wear sanitary napkins far too long. If we could begin, and I think your project is doing this, if we could continue to have an international conversation, the better, really. And I feel very honored to be involved in this conversation, because it's something I feel passionately about. but I haven't actually been able to think about how do I help influence this. And this is from a woman who, quite a number of years ago now, was very unsympathetic to people having difficult periods because I didn't know any better, because I had an easy time. So, anybody else is who doesn't have an easy time is just lazy. And that's really unfair.
I agree with you. I think recently there was a study from UK which says that the initial first 2 days, like a large number of women faced menstruation pain, and it's something like similar to the heart attack. So
Yeah,
like so when I was going through the study, I was shocked actually
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
I mean, some women suffer
Right.
significantly. And I think there is a mental dimension to this as well, which is if you're suffering that much and at the same time you're not having the sympathy that you would have if you were suffering a heart attack, then I think it's very demoralizing, very debilitating mentally also.
Absolutely, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. Uh, Thank you. I'm just moving to my next question. Like your questions are very correlated to each other, and of course, like your address are partially in your last conversation. Uh, When we go to the like starting from the school, college, university, and our workplace, we are very comfortable. Most of the time, we are comfortable with our female colleague, right? We share our pain, share our concern related to the menstruation. But there are workplace which is mostly, limited with the female colleagues. We don't feel so comfortable to tell my colleague sitting next to me that I am not well or I need support. So I just wanted to know from you that you have worked so many organizations and you have seen larger organizations. So what was your observation whether the workplace have that openness, whether male and female colleagues are talking about menstruation, or it is mostly, confined with the female colleagues?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because I think there are still many workplaces that have at least half men, if not more. And, as we know, the higher you get in an organization, the greater proportion of males there are. So in my experience, I have found very rarely men who even will speak openly about this. This is for a range of reasons. It's embarrassment, it's ignorance, not knowing. It's also, I remember speaking with somebody who said, I don't want to say anything because I might say the wrong thing. It's not me. What do I do? How do I help? So unfortunately, I think that piece of work falls to us women, and probably older women who can begin to notice in the workplace where we need to talk about this. So fairly recently, for example, with a male colleague here in Egypt, I had a female colleague who, how should I put it? She sort of lost her temper in an irrational way. Let's put it like that. And the male colleague afterwards went to me, what was that all about? And I said, well, look, let's just think that it might be to do with hormones, where she is in her cycle, or because it was totally irrational. I went to speak to the woman afterwards, and said, are you okay? And she said, look, I get really painful periods and I behave in a very angry way when that happens, and now I feel terrible because I've behaved inappropriately, and what do I do? And I said, well, look, don't do anything. Just get on with feeling okay. And I have started with this male colleague to actually talk about, because the other thing is I'm menopausal, and there are times, so it's very much the same trajectory, and we need to get used to when a woman needs to open the window or put the air conditioning on and everybody else is fine, not to kind of make a big deal of that, but simply to say you have a right to feel a bit cooler than you currently feel. And it's in the same way that I think we have to keep that conversation going, particularly with our male colleagues, so that they build knowledge of menstruation and hormonal change into their armory of possible reasons why people behave in particular ways within the workplace, why women behave in particular ways. And, that might become tedious for them. And I've seen men who've gone, oh God, well, there is one solution to this, and that's not to employ women, and that's ridiculous. We have to knock that one on the head, because we've had those battles over women's right to have children while they work. And now we are at the next battle, I think, which is women's right to be understood as having a menstrual cycle and a menopausal cycle. And that's part of the complexity of women. And, there are complexities associated with male colleagues, and we just have to talk about this more, I think.
Thank you. I think it's so important. Like in my school, I observe, like my daughter is 17, and in her school there are multiple awareness program where they were talking about menstruation cycle, hygiene of the menstruation, breast cancer. And she told me a very interesting story that, all female teachers are invited to attend those awareness program, not the male faculties. And one of the young teacher, probably the psychologist of the school, suggested principal that why not we invite our male colleagues to attend, because they are also part of it, because they have wife, they have friend, they have sister, daughters. And if they do not know, then how
Yes.
they're going to help them, how they're going to support this situation. So I think
that's very important, and that really is groundbreaking, because in different places we have different levels of female camaraderie, where we kind of club together and we're sympathetic to each other, and we sort of share knowledge and share sympathy, and indeed sometimes literally share a menstrual product, because somebody has been caught out. We need to then move to the next stage, and that's difficult because we're opening up a taboo, and it's a taboo, as you said, when that comes with a lot of prejudice and shame. And from very young age, we as women are brought up to sort of feel that there's something mysterious and mystical about this, and the big taboo is that we need to begin to have that conversation with all our colleagues, not only our female colleagues. My father was a biology teacher, so totally kind of never would talk about such a thing with me, absolutely not. And in my family, the men have never been involved in any discussion around this. So therefore, I think the taboo is that within families, within workplaces, and it might be easier in workplaces because these are men that, we work with, but they're not our deep relatives. They're not very, very close to us. So maybe we need to begin that conversation. But I do think this falls to women, sort of like this age group, and I suppose that replicates the older woman's wisdom kind of in folk culture. Once again, it gets kind of activated that if we're not able to have those conversations, we can't expect men or younger women to do so. Yeah.
Thank you. Very valid answer. I think I'm moving to my last question. Japan started menstruation leave a long time back. Now, recently, few of the countries also joined hand. When I visited
Yeah.
South Korea, I came to know that they also have a menstruation leave. Most of us feel, as you told, annual leave. Either we feel sick leave or earn leave. And menstruation leave doesn't comes under neither sick leave nor unleave, but we are forced to do that.
Mm.
When I started this conversation, many of my colleagues told that, we are scared to being judged because point number one, many of them told that we are not comfortable to tell the entire world that, today is the first day of my cycle or second day of my cycle. Another
Yeah.
thing they told that companies probably, start thinking about recruitment of a female candidate because then they think that, okay, I have to give 2 days of paid leave in every month, apart from the casual leave and sick leave, right?
Yeah.
My question to you is that what is your thought about it? It's not only menstruation leave policy, but it's a very, very wider discussion, and it's a global context, but I still wanted to understand that what is your thought on this, about menstruation leave?
Yeah. I mean, if you'd asked me when I was a much younger woman, I would have said, "Oh, don't know about that." I think that I wouldn't necessarily support that. Now I'm absolutely pro menstruation leave, and here's why. We have maternity leave. In most countries to a greater or lesser extent, because it just so happens that women are the ones who have the babies. That's just the way it is. But we're beginning also to think about paternity leave, and not necessarily as much, but my brother has just had a baby with his wife, and they both took time off. He's gone back to work. Obviously, she has longer, but so that he's able to help. Now, it actually occurred to me: would it be incredibly radical if we just had menstrual leave for men and women? We didn't call it menstrual leave. We called it sort of, life leave or something. I mean, that might be ridiculous, but somehow I think, I keep thinking of partners, husbands or boyfriends. If this was talked about more, actually sometimes are the carers. If women are not feeling very well at all at home, their male counterpart will say, go to bed, I'll sort out the dinner, I'll look after the kids, maybe we need to become more sympathetic to that and have a kind of sliding scale of leave. That's probably utopia. But for now, we should be guaranteeing 2 days a month paid leave for women, because this is natural, this happens, and we've dealt with the childbirth issue. So the next issue is when it's non-childbirth, because if you think about menstruation, that's just the flip side of being pregnant, and it's natural. There's nothing we can do about it. And society values children. If you want to be very economist about it, we need children to look after aging populations. Therefore, we can't penalize women who either have children or are at the point in their cycle where they're not having children, or they're choosing not to have children. So, I believe that if we were to give that menstrual leave formally, we would get as much out of our female workforce as we do our male workforce. One, because I think there would be a fabulously almost grateful appreciation of an acknowledgement of something that's natural. And as a manager, in my experience, where I have agreed flexible leave, for example, with colleagues who have childcare issues, or who need to spend a day a week at home and can work online, I have ended up having more than 100% commitment from that individual. So I am not, I don't believe we wouldn't receive that from our female workforce. I think we'd get a much more collegial approach to individuals. And, legally, and it still happens, I'm not saying it doesn't, because I think I've seen enough examples of people saying, let's not appoint that woman because she's likely to go off and have babies, or let's not appoint that woman because she, I mean, people haven't said it, but because she will have to have a bit of time off if she needs to at her periods. So, I think law is helping us achieve more equality. I don't know that the practice has necessarily caught up with that, but this is all part of a process of developing equity for women in the workplace. And I think the more we talk openly about menstruation and the need for menstrual leave, I think the more we're being real about what's needed to have the unique voices of women in our workforce alongside men in our workforce.
Thank you, Catherine. I think it's very, very important point, and I can see like across the globe, many people are talking about it, and you clearly stated that when we talk about empathy, I think this small things makes empathy. Empathy is nothing we can see or we can touch. It's all about how we practice empathy.
Yeah, I very much agree. And I think, for example, the period poverty campaigns in some of the UK universities that I was involved with, where we had people donate menstrual products, and we had them freely available, both in the bathrooms and also in the library if somebody needed to, it puts a tangible product in a space that's inhabited by men and women, because we had gender neutral toilets, so that I think young men are beginning to grow in their awareness of this around them. In 50 years' time, I don't think we'll be having the same conversation, but I think it'll be a result of the efforts, and as you say, the small empathetic efforts that are happening now that certainly in our lifetime will have changed. I think will continue to change.
Thank you. Thank you for your participation to this project, and I'm sure your thoughts will add a lot of value to this project. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Well, actually, Aditi, you've just given me some ideas, because I think one of the things I need to do is look at what we're doing in this university in Egypt to help our female students and our female colleagues. So I'll be doing a bit of thinking about that.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to say that I remember in my entire life, all my students, girl students, they used to come to me because I was one of the most close mentor to them, and they say, I just missed my date. Do you have something like, I'm not carrying it. And so now I can, when I'm doing this project, when I'm reading, of course, like when I reach to my late 40s, now I understand okay, how helpless that time they were, and that they gain some confidence and come to me and say, do you have any product for me?
Absolutely. I think that's so amazing. And actually, it says a lot about you as well, that people feel that they can approach you with that request. So, those are the small empathetic gestures that we need to have.
Thank you. See you again.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.